evening viewers and welcome to the Art with World. I am your host ARSHAD WAHEED. Today we are going to discuss first 25 years of Pakistani cinema, and our guest today is Dr. Salman Asif. Welcome to our program, Dr.
Thank you.
Dr. Salman has studied from National College of Arts, Lahore, and then he also studies from Winchester School in UK, and he did his PhD from Southampton University, UK. He has taught at National College of Arts, its Rawalpindi campus, and Fine Arts Department of Punjab University as well. He has also given lectures on art appreciation and art history in institutions like Oxford University, Cambridge University, School of Oriental Studies and Asian Studies, and London School of Economics. Thank you very much, Dr. for sparing time to come to this show. Before I start about questions about Pakistani cinema, I would also like to learn from you, what was the environment at that time? What was cinema doing at the time of 47 and some years before that and some years after that? If you could just enlighten us with that.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, and my fear is that we might just be able to scratch the surface.
Yeah, it's a huge topic.
Or identify or touch just the tip of the iceberg. It is a fascinating story, cinema in South Asia, and we'll start from South Asia, as you pointed out. So from 1913 onwards, cinema in South Asia, it really did take a huge leap within decades. So some of the key events or eventful movies that I'd like to touch upon, and that could be our point of departure for today's discussion, is that we are looking at a time which coincides with the independence movement, with a certain degree of progressive political awareness, not only amongst those who concerned themselves with the ideas of freedom and the movement of independence, but amongst artists and writers and poets and painters. So that kind of awareness and that kind of desire to claim a certain space for themselves is already there. So let me take you to 1941.
Okay.
In 1941, we have a movie, and that really is a trailblazer, Naya Sansar.
Naya Sansar, okay. New World.
A new universe, maybe.
Yeah.
So a new world or a new universe, if you like. And who pens the story down and sort of pulls this movie together are two friends who are both journalists, Khwaja Ahmad Abbas.
Khwaja Ahmad Abbas was, I think, nephew of Maulana Altaf Hussain Hali as well.
Indeed, but in his own right.
Yeah, of course. Great
if you like, a revolutionary, a socialist, Marxist sympathizer, if you like, and very, very concerned with the ideas of independence and freedom. So he joins up, and a journalist himself.
Yeah.
So he joins up with a fellow journalist, Mr. Arun Acharya, and the two young men, they dream up, if you like, a Naya Sansar, or a new world. A new world where there's rule of law, where there's justice, where there's access to justice, a world that is defined not by colonialism or by inequality or by propaganda or by untruth, but a world that celebrates the power of truth. They write the story and plan to direct and produce this movie. And who do they get as the female protagonist? They invite Begum Khurshid Mirza, also known as Renuka Devi. And as you, student of literature, would know, and many of your viewers would know, that Begum Khurshid Mirza, although hailing from Aligarh, and that too a renowned, celebrated family of Aligarh, some of the founders of Aligarh women's and girls' education, if you like, was the younger sister of Dr. Rashid Jahan.
Uh-huh.
Herself.
Progressive writers. She was very active member of Progressive Writers.
Absolutely.
Friend of Faiz Ahmed Faiz as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Faiz Ahmed Faiz is often referred
Yeah.
to Dr. Rashid Jahan as a mentor.
Yeah.
And not only her, I think the other writers who've also, writers of note in Urdu literature who refer to her as a profound influence
Yeah.
on their thinking, on their understanding of the world in which they lived, and their aspirations, if you like. So this movie really brings in the point of the youth of the Indian subcontinent aspiring for a new world.
Okay.
We take a quick leap now
Yeah.
to 1946. Let's see what's going on in the part of the Indian subcontinent that was to become Pakistan. So I bring you to Lahore.
Uh-huh.
So in Lahore, there are two groups.
Uh-huh.
There may be several groups, but two more renowned groups. So there's the Bhati Gate group,
Okay.
and then there's the Government College, which is now Government College University.
Yeah.
There's the Government College students groups,
Okay.
all young,
Mhm.
ignited by passion for literature, poetry, visual arts, and performing arts, and now cinema. So if you look at the Government College crowd, you find within them the famous Anand family, Devanand and his elder brother Chetanand,
Chetanand, yeah.
indeed. And you have Rafi Pir,
Uh-huh.
you have Zede Bukhari, of course you have Faiz Ahmed Faiz, of course you have Noon Mim Rashid. So that's the Lahore of the 40s, as we all know, the city of Amrita Pritam, the city of Amrita Shergill in 30s, city of Krishnan Chandra, city of Khushwant Singh, so on and so, B.K. Sanyal. So there is a milieu, if you like. There is a literary environment. There is a stratosphere where literature intersects with ideology.
Okay.
Ideology intersects with performing and visual arts.
Yeah.
So the Government College crowd identifies Uma Keshap, a young Kennedy College student who's a family friend and daughter of Dr. Keshap, a very famous botanist, working at the Government College at the time, probably head of the Department of Botany. Uma Keshap is already made some name at YWCA and YMCA and theatre groups and so on and so forth, and they adopt Gorky's famous work,
Lower depths. Lower depths.
Lower Depths,
Yeah.
and they sort of reincarnate it in Urdu stroke Hindustani as Nicha Nagar.
Ah, very famous movie, actually.
Again, the movie concerns itself with the idea of justice, with the idea of fraternity, with the idea of equality, and it very pointedly raises questions with regards to exploitation, manipulation, and deception, without sort of taking a very clear position. And I think that is the strength of the movie, that it works within the shadows and ambiguity, but it really is a movie and a very potent movie with regards to decoloniality.
Okay.
That talks about Nicha Nagar, an abode of people who are considered as those who have fallen people by land usurpers and also by land developers. Now, this movie is produced, socialist realism, and it kind of sends messages across the Indian subcontinent. It sends messages to Calcutta, it sends messages to Madras, to Bombay. Many of these huge sort of hubs of cinema production that had concerned themselves with largely romantic movies or costume dramas or movies based on mythology, but not necessarily movies that leveraged on and create a socialist realist drama. But this movie also received, it's one of the earliest movies from the Indian subcontinent that received international recognition.
Really?
It received the famous Rose Palme Award. And this is 1946. But we also see what's going on in Bombay, and it was called Bombay at that time, where V. Shantaram produces his landmark movie, Dr. Kotnis Ki Amar Kahani, story of an Indian doctor who joins the Chinese forces in the face of Second World War's Japanese aggression, and he works with patients of plague, and he ultimately sacrifices his life. Again, you see very, very strong messages and an undercurrent of resistance.
Okay.
This is cinema of resistance.
Yeah. You were also referring to this Bhati Gate group of Lahore as well.
Oh, indeed. So the Bhati Gate group of Lahore is a very interesting network. It's a very interesting, if you like, a gang of young, highly charged individuals. So you have Kardar amongst them.
A.R. Kardar.
A.R. Kardar amongst them. You have sporadically Imtiaz Ali Taj Sahib amongst them. You have Lala Yaqub, who was a very famous actor at the time, and he'd acted in a number of silent era movies. M. Ismail, who had a very, very long acting career spanning over half a century. He played Kedu in Heer Ranjha, produced in Lahore back in late 30s, early 40s, but he also played Kedu in the famous Heer Ranjha that was produced more or less 40 years hence. You have Rafiq Ghaznavi. So the musician and the actor, but as an individual, he was larger than life, larger than being an actor, a musician, somebody who was a great influence on cinematic arts and theatrical arts. So they had started producing silent era cinema. Short movies and films that were released, but year and a half after the first talkie came, that was Alamara in 1935, Lahore had its own talkie, Heer Ranjha, the famous Heer Ranjha, and it was directed by Kardar, and of course we know the male protagonist was Ghaznavi Sahab, and the female protagonist was Anvari or Anvara Begum, and it was sort of funded by and it was supported by a local Lahore studio. And soon after Heer Ranjha, there was a string of movies that were coming, including Gul Bakauli, in which Madam Noor Jahan played the child star, and of course the music was by Master Ghulam Haider, who had identified not only Malka Tarannum Noor Jahan
Lata Mangeshkar as well.
And Lata Mangeshkar ji also. So you have this activity taking place. We are talking about 1940s, and by 46 there were no less than, there could be more, but no less than 6 functioning film studios.
In Lahore?
In Lahore. So you had Dilsukh Pancholi studio, you had the Shori studio, you had Air India studio, you had another studio called Divan Studio. So you had these several studios located either on Mall Road, Muslim Town. So if you can...
Between Muslim Town and Model Town.
And Model Town, because that was an open area in the middle of the city and the new city, if you like. So that's where these studios were established. And they began to see a very a dynamism, if you like, which was hitherto unknown. And gone were the times when the Lahore-produced cinema was only labor of love, which it was initially. It was never highly profitable. It was driven by passion, but around 46 and 45 you begin to see that there is a profitability. There are movies created of the span and scale that do business profitably in other parts of the Indian subcontinent and bring in the revenues whereby you can begin to see that the seeds of an industry are sown.
Okay. So what were early years of Pakistani cinema in Lahore? Who were the people who developed and let it grow more?
So Arshad Sahib, you and I were discussing just the other day, and you reminded me when I said that it was a time of turbulence.
Yeah, of course.
It was a tumult. It was a scramble. It was a chaos. But it was also a time of hope. It was also the time where the youth of the subcontinent wanted to create and were devoted to creating something new out of whatever there was. And you said, you quoted Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities' first sentence, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. For Lahore, it really was the best of times and worst of times. It was worst of times in the sense that Lahore was hit hard, like Delhi, with communal and sectarian violence. It was hit hard by the colonial repression. And Lahore did see a mass exodus of some of its most prodigal artistic minds and its artistic children, creative minds. So we see the Sanyal family leaving, we see Chetananand, the Anand family leaving, we see Dr. Keshup's family leaving, that's Kamini Kaushal and others. We see Zora Sehgal leaving.
Many came in as well.
Yes. So that's the exodus part of it. Amrita Pritam leaves and Khushwant Singh leaves and Krishna Chandra leaves and so on and so forth. But you also see an influx. You see influx coming in from Bombay, principally. People who had left Lahore to work in Bombay and to gain recognition, to be part of the larger theatre of cinema, if you like. So amongst them, and your viewers would know just as much, Noor Jahan Sahiba and Shaukat Hussain Rizvi, Swaran Lataji, Nazir Sahib. You have Meena Shori coming in, along with Roop Kumar Shori, little later in the 50s. But then you have some famous actors also coming in, such as Begum Khurshid Mirza, Renuka Devi. You have Khurshid Bano also coming in, the famous actor who played the role of Tani in K.L. Sehgal's Tan Sen. You have Ragini, who had made great name through Kardar Sahib's Shah Jahan. You have other actors who were supporting actors, but supporting actors of name and renown, such as Himalaya Wala, Alauddin Sahab, Bibbo Santosh Kumar, Talish Sahib. M. Ismail was here already, Ajmal Sahib was here already, Asha Bhosle was here already. But what do they return to? I think that's the question. They don't return to the Lahore, which was the seat of learning, which was the seat of dynamic ideas, which was the seat of creativity. This was Lahore, whose most prominent landmarks had been scarred and marred by the violence around and during 1947. The 6 or 8 film studios were either plundered, a lot of machinery had disappeared, nobody knows where it went. Some people think that it was transported earlier on. Other people think that it was looted, plundered, and vandalized. So you really come back to an empty shell.
So what were the earlier movies which were made in Lahore, if you like?
So the question was, how do you even begin to bring all these pieces together? Something which is so brutally fragmented and scattered. How do you rebuild it? What are the building blocks? And in this case, the building blocks were the human resource themselves.
Oh.
You had the best of actors, you had the best of editors, you had the best of directors, you had the best of poets, the best of singers, the best of lyricists who had come. So Master Ghulam Haider, so on and so forth. And as we know, in September year 1948, we get the first film, Teri Yaad.
Teri Yaad, okay.
So starring Nasir Khan Sahib.
Dilip Kumar's brother, I guess.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yusuf Khan Sahib's younger brother, and Asha Bhosle, who had acted, not to be confused by Asha Bhosle, the great singer and younger sister of
Lata Mangeshkar.
Lata Mangeshkar ji. This is Asha Bhosle with P, Lahore-based actor, theatre actor, film actor. Yeah, and again, you know, an individual of many parts, a literary figure in her own right in many ways. The film bombs because it's, the time is terrible. But I can take you very quickly to early 50s now.
Yeah, sure.
Because, for example, Soran Lataji and Nazir Sahib, they look at the situation, and this is also the time where there's unrestricted inflow of movies coming in, movies made in Calcutta or movies made in Bombay. And it is an industry. There are cinemas across West and East Pakistan, and hundreds and thousands of people's sort of earning and their livelihood is connected to this industry. So whether it is a ticket seller or whether it is a canteen tea seller in the cinema or a bookseller or a technician in the cinema or the cinema owners. So you begin to see two schools of thought. There are the earlier filmmakers who come who wish to make new movies, but they're very, very alive and very aware of the fact that their cinema, on technical grounds, not on the creative grounds, but purely on technical grounds, because they do not have the wherewithal to create the illusion that cinema demands, or the production value. So that production value will not be achieved with the meager resources that they had or the truncated resources that they have. So there is some friction with the distributors such as Bari Malik, Giagul, and others who are bringing in movies, and their argument is that, look, there has to be an inflow of films coming from all over. Otherwise, this industry will die down. And the filmmakers demand that, yes, we realize that, we appreciate it, and we understand it. But it should be unrestricted. There should be a quota.
So you're referring to that JAL
agitation.
After that, there was a quota that certain number of films from Pakistan would go to India. They would be screened there and vice versa. And that helped Pakistan filmmakers to make films to export as well. And
I think that's the crucial point.
yeah. Okay.
Because this agitation wasn't born out of malice or prejudice. This agitation was born out of certain practical, very rudimentary questions. And the crucial question was that if you are constantly under the shadow of high production value, how would you be able to grow? And how would you be able to call upon the decision makers of this new state Pakistan to consider cinema as an industry and to make state investments.
And I think quite a few number of films were made after that which did very well on the box office.
Tremendously well.
Yeah.
So we can start with Pere, Punjabi movie by Nazir Sahib and Swaran Lataji, and that did roaring business. It is sometimes even referred to Pakistan's first silver jubilee, and of course music by Baba Chishti. So it was, if you like, a troika that you see again and again, not a formula but a troika. And in few years later you also see Lare, but also you see a movie called Mundri that does a very good business with Ragini. Urdu cinema is finding its space. Urdu movies are being produced. They're not being very successful, but it's finding its room, it's finding its space. And that brings us to the first decade of 50s, where we begin to see release of some of the blockbusters of its time, such as Dupatta with Madam Noor Jahan.
She acted as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Ajay Kumar, Sudhir Sahib, and Madam Noor Jahan.
Viewers, this is a time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Salman, we were just talking about many people who came to Pakistan. I mean, they belong to this part of Punjab, but they came from Bombay in around 1947. One of very important personality was Sadasan Manto, the great short story writer who wrote scripts for films in Bombay as well. Did he also contribute something in Pakistani cinema? Did he write for some film?
Well, he started writing for magazines. So he wrote for magazines, and he wrote his independent sort of fiction also. He writes a screenplay for an initial movie, 1949-1950 movie, Beli.
Beli.
Yes, it's no, it's an Urdu movie. He writes for it. The film is produced by Masood Parvez Sahib, and it doesn't do good business. But we do see references to Saadat Hussain Manto. For example, in mid-50s, we have Yakke Wali, Punjabi film with Musarat Nazir Sahiba and Sudhir Sahib, and a very, very successful movie, and movie that has very strong references or inspired by Saadat Hussain Manto's short story License.
Okay.
And then later, as you pointed out a few days ago, one of the movies that you've been very interested in is Gunahagar, was it?
No, it was Ek Guna Aur Sahi.
Ek Guna Aur Sahi.
Yeah, it was based on Manto's short story Mummy, I think.
Mummy.
Yeah.
And Sabia Khanum plays the role.
Yeah, Rani Sabia Khanum. Yeah.
And it probably, I think it won some international acknowledgement as well. Okay. I think it was sent to the Moscow Film Festival in its times, and it won some appreciation, so beyond frontiers, if you like. Yeah. So you do see those references coming in, but regrettably, unfortunately, it was a very different world to which Manto had returned, and it was not a very hospitable world for him.
Yeah. We just mentioned Musarat Nazir. She was a great actress, and I remember one of her films, Shaheed, which has brought this subject of Palestinian conflict in our films as well. Is it so?
Absolutely. So Shaheed, you've taken us to 60s, which is wonderful. Okay. So is a landmark, earlier 60s. It's a landmark movie, and it is in the same string of movies that were being made in 50s and prior to 50s also, that touched the issue of coloniality, that touched the issue of self-identification, that self-determination, you know, a question of identity, but also with identity, the propriety, the access to your own land, access to your own resources. So initially we see movies such as Baghi and Farangi prior to Shaheed, but Shaheed comes at a very, very large scale, and this movie concerns itself with pre-Israel Palestine. And it concerns itself with the expansionism that led to the displacement of Palestinians, to usurpation, if you like, or occupation of Palestine. It talks about local resources and control over resources. Again, deception, manipulation, exploitation of film, far ahead of its times.
Yeah.
But it will also be remembered for Naseem Begum's unforgettable song, Us Bewafa Ka Sheher Hai Aur Hum Hain Dosto.
And it was written by Munir Niazi,
Ji haan.
great poet. But I think there were a lot of other poets as well writing for Pakistani films at that time, if you can.
Ji haan, bilkul. So we can start with Qatil Shifai, youngest of all. But he's important to mention here because he wrote songs for Teri Yaad,
Really?
the first film
Okay.
produced and made in Pakistan. And his span of his creative and professional contributions, it spans over, again, decades, if you like. But then you have other very, very almost reverend names, reputed and respected names.
Saifuddin Saif.
Saifuddin Saif Sahib, but also Tanveer Naqvi Sahib, Fiyaz Hashmi Sahib. You know, you have names such as Rais Amrohi, who is not renowned for writing.
Did he write for?
Prior to partition, he did write for cinema, and after once Pakistan was created, he lent his creative writing to Saeed Fazli Sahib from the family of Saptan Fazli and Fazli Kareem Fazli Sahib, and they made their Karachi-based movie Waqt Ki Pukar. So these were some of the best minds that were going into it, and you pointed out Saifuddin Saif Sahib yourself, but then there are other names like Ahmad Rahi Sahib.
Oh, he's a great, wonderful,
So,
wonderful Punjabi poet.
and for Punjabi, Urdu and Punjabi, but in Punjabi then you have Hussein Khadri Sahib, and Baba Chishti himself was also was a lyricist and a composer. And then from the then East Pakistan, we have Bashir Ahmed, who wrote Urdu songs with a pseudo or nom de plume Deep.
And what a velvet voice.
Velvet voice and a great composer. So I think that should also take us to the question of cinema that was produced in Pakistan of languages other than Urdu and Punjabi.
Well, you may tell us briefly about cinema in Dhaka and cinema in Karachi as well.
So there were no studios in 1947 in Karachi, but Karachi was the capital of Pakistan. And port city and hub of activity, but Karachi also received some of the best minds, creative minds and technicians. In fact, Swaran Lataji and Nazir Sahib and Madam Noor Jahan and Shaukat Hussain Rizvi Sahib, they first arrived in Karachi, and from there they moved to Lahore. So Karachi had its own milieu of creative minds and creative people, but it took a while for Karachi to set up its first studio, the first, if you like, operational studio. There were some attempts earlier also in late 50s, but early on in early 60s and late 50s, you had the famous Harun family, and one of their family members, Sayyid Harun Sahib, he establishes the Eastern Films Studio. Eastern Film Studio has new machinery that was also probably received under the Colombo plan, but he has some of the best technicians with him as well. For example, people like Shirazi and people like Pyare Khan, and if you watch movies from 50s and 60s, you would see processing by either Shirazi or Pyare Khan, and these names keep appearing. So for a synagogue or for general members of public, these are just names, and sometimes you don't even pay attention to these credits, but both of these names were highly professional processors who were trained in some of the best institutions of the subcontinent, and they'd come to Karachi. Sayyid Harun Saab sort of rallied all of these great minds, and the Karachi of that time produced the first Sindhi movie,
Umar Marvi, I guess.
Umar Marvi.
And it fared very well.
It fared
on
very
box
well,
office.
not only in Pakistan, but surprisingly and delightfully, it fared very well in India, in particular in Bombay, that
A lot of
had and
Sindhis in
has
Bombay.
a huge Sindhi population. There were many Sindhis who had migrated from Pakistan to Bombay, but there were other movies also that were being produced by the Karachi group, if you like. Movies such as Sasi with Sabiha Khanum, and it was produced at a very large scale. It did fairly well. But I think Karachi comes of age with its own youth, with its own young people. And you see a troika there. You have Waheed Murad, Parvez Malik Sahib,
Sohail Rana.
and Sohail Rana Sahib.
An Arman film.
And they create the magic. Well, they make Arman, but and then there are other movies also that come one after the other. But also Karachi gives even Lahore film industry some of its best actors. So starting from Muhammad Ali Sahib, Waheed Murad Sahib, Zeba Ji, Nair Sultana Sahiba, Shamimara Ji. So some of these, the Siddiqui family, perhaps they were also from Karachi, or they had connections in Karachi. So you have some of the best names coming from Karachi. And later, in the late 70s and 80s, we see singers such as Mehnaz and Humaira Chana, but male singers.
Ahmed Rushdie.
Ji haan. Ahmed Rushdie Sahib and Mujib Alam Sahib. So you have Sohail Rana Ji, and of course, many of the East Pakistani actors would also come to Karachi, and they would act in Karachi-based movies, and some of them actually created movies in Karachi as well. And that takes us to cinema being produced. Oh, by the way, the first Pashtun movie was also Yusuf Khan.
Gul Makai.
No.
Gul Makai.
It was called Yusuf Khan and Sher Banu.
Sher Banu, okay.
Yusuf Khan or Sher Banu with Suraya Khan. That was also made in Karachi. So Karachi, a cosmopolitan city really, a metropolis that had people from all over Pakistan, if you like, a microcosm of a macrocosm, and it had some of the best minds. So it really did give Lahore a run for its money in its own times, and it had this youthfulness around it. We'll return to it in the next couple of minutes, but if you allow me to take you to Dhaka.
Yeah, that was, I was just going to ask you. Yeah.
So Dhaka didn't have studios in 47 or in 50, and there was a reason for that. There were films coming to East Bengal or East Pakistan and now Bangladesh from Calcutta, but also, within the Bengal's milieu, संगीत से जीवन जुड़ा हुआ है.
Life is linked with
संगीत साधना हर घर में
music.
है.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There was
So,
Bulbul Academy in Dhaka,
Ji,
which
ji. Bulbul
Shabnam was,
Chaudhary. Bulbul Chaudhary was the
yeah, yeah,
national dancer of Pakistan at one
yeah.
point. Uh,
This Shabnam also got training from there.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
and many, many others.
yeah.
So we're talking about Bengal, where Nazrul Geeti and Ravindra Sangeet and Bhutiali uh, is not something that you go to library
Yeah,
to
it's
familiarize
in every
yourself with.
house.
घर घर में संगीत
Yeah,
साधना है,
yeah.
घर घर में एक अभ्यास है, अगर आप समझें तो. So you have this atmosphere, creative, and then there is natak or natok. There is theatre. There is performing arts.
And if I remember, many of great films of Pakistan were made by, I mean, filmmakers from then East Pakistan, like Chakori, if I remember.
Yes.
It was made by Ehtisham,
Yes.
director.
Yes.
Yeah. And very important fact, thing I would like you to tell us a bit more about that. We had talked about poets, and one of our great poet, Faiz Ahmad Faiz, he was also engaged with one film, I think, Dur Hai Sukka Gaon, that a place of
Yeah.
peace is far away. And it was filmed in Dhaka or in East Pakistan, I guess. Would you tell us something
So
about
Kardar Sahib
Yeah,
and Faiz Ahmad Faiz Sahib, they joined hands to create socialist realist cinema, and the movie was called The Dawn Shall Come, but in Urdu it was called Jago Hua Savera.
Jogu was there,
Yeah.
sorry.
Music was by Tamar Baran, who had come from West Bengal.
Uh-huh.
And then Tamar Baran gave music to a number of Pakistani movies, and most importantly for Anoki. Many of your viewers would remember the famous song Gadi Ko Chalana Babu
Yeah,
Zara
yeah.
Dhire Dhire Dhire. And Anoki will also be remembered for Sheila Ramani, who had come from Bombay, an established actor there, an established heroine there, to act in this Pakistani movie. So Tamar Baran Sahib was the musiqar or the musician of this movie, and this also received international recognition. Socialist realist drama about the fishing community, but it also talks about, again, rootedness. It also talks about individual and community, the power of collective work, the kind of collectivism and dignity of persons who are grassroots people. But even at that time, there's no studio, and this movie was largely outdoors. So we begin to see that in early 60s, we have the Film Development Corporation, and with that, we get Urdu cinema and Bangla cinema. You pointed out, and very rightly so, Chakori, but prior to Chakori, we had Chanda that did roaring business. We had Talash, we had Mala,
Darshan.
we had Darshan,
Yeah.
and then came Chakori. But I would like to take one very important name from East Pakistan and Bangladesh, Zahir Rehan. Young lad in his 20s. I'd like to mention two of his Bangla movies. One in 1961 called Kokoner Oshni, Why Didn't She Come? I would ask your viewers to watch it on YouTube. It is a cinema to behold. The other movie is Kancha Dayal, The Wall of Glass, that received international accolade. Both of these movies are now regarded as parallel cinema thresholds, not only as Pakistani or East Pakistani or Bangladeshi movies, but as movies from South Asia. And also reminding ourselves that the first colored movie was also made by Zahir Rehan, Sangam. हजार साल का जो बुढ़ा मर गया धूमधाम से उसे दफन करो.
It was his one. Oh. It was a very famous song.
And the first CinemaScope film a year later was also created in the now Bangladesh and former East Pakistan, again by Zahir Rehan. As I said, that we'd only be able to scratch the surface and touch the tip of the iceberg. Can I just, before we close, say that my conversation really stems out of the reading, and I would call upon your viewers also to look for some of the excellent writings that have been done on this work, and I would like to appreciate and pay tribute to individuals such as Janab Zakhmi Kanpuri, Janab Dukhi Prem Nagari, Mushtaq Gazdar Sahab, Iftikhar Dadi Sahab, who have done exhaustive work on Pakistani cinema, and without their work, today's conversation wouldn't have been possible.
No, it's a very good conversation and I think very interesting. Few things we remembered, we are just short of time, but I would like to refer to them. We talked about poets, so Josh Saab also wrote lyrics for a film, I think, Qadriya. And maybe we can talk some more very important films of that era, if you have time.
So, Josh Sahib, the revolutionary poet of his times, but also the poet who held a degree of authority and autonomy over the language Urdu. And his life and his poetry and his prose are often considered as veritable touchstones against which you can measure the quality of language. He had written earlier, before 1947, for cinema, and in the 60s, as you pointed out, he writes for Pakistani cinema, and the movie being directed by Humayun Mirza Sahib, who was a devout reader of literature. He goes to Josh Maliabadi Sahib, and this is Karachi cinema, and he says to him, "Aap hamare liye film ka sangeet likhiye, write, do lyrics for us." And he's not immediately inspired by it, and then there is some conversation around money, 10,000 rupees to be offered, and that was huge sum of money in the times when some of the top lyricists were getting 2,000 rupees for penning the entirety of 7 to 9 songs for a movie. That's agreed upon, and a room is booked for him in Metropole Hotel, and he doesn't write, and the time comes, and at one point Humayun Mirza and the producer, they get very, very concerned when the writing will come, and Humayun Mirza comes up to and respectfully says to Josh Saab, it's been a while, and could we have something from you? And says, okay, tell me the situation. And the situation is being referred to him, and he comes up with strings of songs. But I think for your viewers, what they would remember, and perhaps maybe you can play a video clip if time allows.
Faza se moti,
baras rahe hai,
hawa tarane suna rahi hai. Before we close, maybe we can have a few words about top musicians of that time, early years of Pakistan, and maybe a few films which are referred to even now these days. If you have time, just a couple of minutes maybe.
Well, of course. I think that we can go through a very quick list of some of the names, and we are bound to miss many important names because of paucity of time. But I think just to remind ourselves, the musicians whose timeless tunes, as they say, that mortal lives, immortal tunes and immortal works, that your audiences, your viewers should also follow up. Many of them would be experts in their own right also. So we can start with Master Ghulam Haider. Then earlier on, we have Firoz Nizami Sahib, Dupatta Ke Geet. Then we have Rashid Atre Sahib. We have also Master Inayat. Khwaja Khurshid Anwar, a school in his own right. the kind of music he creates, no one creates. But then you have some newcomers for their own time who bring in a completely different school of composition. You have Nisar Bazmi Sahib, who brings in a completely different idea of what cinema should be, brings in Runa Lala Ji's Avaz, you know, and then you have Robin Ghosh. So Robin Ghosh reminds us of Koya, so which Khwaja Khurshid Anwar Sahib also introduced in songs of Hamras, for example, but Robin Ghosh brings in the power of the choir, probably because he himself was a choir boy when he was young. I would also like to say that Master Ghulam Haider was also quite unique in the sense that he had an incredible sense of orchestra. His compositions are not necessarily semi-classical or classical compositions, such as those compositions by Master Inayat and Rashid Atriji and others. His compositions are very sprightly, very lilty, but he brings in the concept of big orchestra that he had worked with in Bombay. Many important names are bound to be missed out, and I apologize for that.
It's fine. We had a very good discussion with you, and I just wanted it to continue, but I'm told that this time is up, so we're closing it for now, but maybe for some other time we would like to continue from where we have just stopped. Thank you very much, Dr. Salman, for being with us and bringing in such valuable information for us and our viewers. So viewers, thank you very much for watching us. See you next Sunday, same time.